There was a period when Israel, the northern kingdom, lived immersed in idolatry, corruption, and risky alliances with foreign nations. It was an age in which the heart of the nation drifted further and further from God, even while maintaining an outward appearance of religiosity. It was in this dark environment that the Lord raised up Hosea, a simple man, yet one with a heart attentive to the heavenly voice. Hosea likely lived in the northern regions, where he could feel up close the spiritual decline of his people. He watched with sorrow the altars dedicated to false gods, the dishonest dealings of justice, the pride of the rulers, and the coldness of religious ceremonies. He knew something needed to change. Interceded, he waited, until one day he heard from God a command that would test everything he understood about calling, submission, and love. The divine instruction was direct and, at the same time, surprising. God called him to marry a woman of questionable behavior, not to build an ordinary family, but to become a living symbol of the relationship between God and Israel. Through his own life, Hosea would become an embodied metaphor of divine love, wended, yet resilient. This calling was not easy to accept. Within himself, Hosea may have wrestled with the strangeness of the mission, with society's critical gaze, with the suffering that seemed inevitable. But his response was not resistance, it was surrender. He understood that God's plans do not always follow human logic, but they always reveal profound truths. Accepting that mission was like giving up his own reputation, ordinary dreams, and daily securities. Hosea would not proclaim the divine message merely with words, but with his own living his emotions, his personal story. The prophet now became the living part of the prophecy. Thus began the journey of a man who would feel the weight of betrayal, the emptiness of distance, but also the power of a love that does not give up. His obedience would pave the way for a story that would echo for generations, revealing the greatness of God's love for a people who insisted on turning away. With a tender heart and firm steps toward his calling, Hosea went to meet Gomer. She was known for her beauty, but also for the unstable paths she walked. Her journey carried scars, and her reputation did not go unnoticed. Even so, it was with her that the prophet formed a covenant, beginning a marriage that would be more than intimate. It would be prophetic. In the beginning, there was expectation. Perhaps Gomer, upon being received with dignity and affection, would find in Hosea a new beginning. He treated her with kindness, offering her a home, protection, and the genuine desire to build a family. There were simple gestures of tenderness, conversations in the evening, and the rhythm of a household beginning to pulse with new sounds. But soon the signs of restlessness appeared. Gomer did not seem whole. Her gaze, at times distant, revealed nostalgia for an old life, illusory freedoms, and empty promises. Hosea noticed her increasingly frequent absences, the prolonged silences, the moments when she left without saying where she was going. The pain grew like an open wound. Hosea loved her, yet he was set aside. Gomer's presence at his side was often only physical. Her heart was elsewhere, divided between the home she now had and the old pleasures that called her back. It was like living with a shadow. She was there, but she no longer fully belonged to that place. Even faced with such frustration, Hosea remained faithful. He carried within himself the certainty that his union with Gomer had a greater purpose. Every gesture of unreturned love, every day marked by silence, every night spent waiting represented God's own feelings toward the people of Israel. The marriage that could have been just another union between a man and a woman turned into a living message. Hosea began to realize that genuine love is not limited to immediate response. It persists even when there is no reciprocity. It remains even when everything appears to fall apart. And so, as their bond began to show its first cracks, the prophet's heart prepared for an even more painful and revealing journey. For Hosea's faithfulness would be tested in ways he never imagined. As the days passed, the signs were no longer hidden. Gomer no longer concealed her outings, nor disguised the empty glances she exchanged with other men. Hosea, though he wished not to see, could no longer deny it. His wife was being unfaithful, and the betrayal that once seemed only a distant fear now became a bitter and piercing truth. She left home for long periods, and her excuses became increasingly fragile. Rumors began to spread, whispers in the streets, looks of pity and criticism. The prophet, known for his firm message and connection with God, was now spoken of in mocking tones. His pain became public, his shame exposed. But what wounded Hosea most was not merely the abandonment or the humiliation. It was love. He loved Gomer not with naive fantasy, nor expecting something in return, but with the devotion of someone who sees value where no one else sees it. Every time she returned, even briefly, he received her, waited for her, prayed for her, and hoped she would choose to stay. She sought empty illusions, traded affection for interest, and confused freedom with true slavery. And every time she left, Hosea felt even more alone, more drained not only as a man, but as a symbolic representative. For now, in his intimate sorrow, he understood how God saw Israel. The people, like Gomer, had traded loyalty for idols, forgotten his care, his provision, and his covenant. They ran after other gods, riches, and supposed political security, ignoring the love that had brought them out of Egypt and led them through the wilderness. Gomer's unfaithfulness was, in truth, a reflection of the betrayal of an entire nation. And even so, Hosea did not give up. Amid tears, silence, and days when the home felt cold and empty, he remained steadfast. His heart held a deeper conviction that God's love does not end when the other fails. On the contrary, it is precisely at that point that it shines the most. The open wound in the prophet's chest now became part of his mission, and what would come next, far from easing the pain, would only deepen the drama he lived both inside his home and within his soul. Amid the suffering of betrayal and the confusion that hovered over his household, Hosea became a father. But even this moment, which could have brought joy and renewal, was transformed by God into a powerful prophetic sign. The birth of Hosea and Gomer as children was not merely a family event, it became a living message to the people of Israel. The first child was a boy. God commanded that he be named Jezreel. The choice was not random. Jezreel was the name of a well-known valley, a stage for bloody battles and judgment. It was as if God were saying, "I will remember the blood that was shed. I will visit the injustices." The child's name carried the weight of a warning. Judgment was near. Next came a girl. Her name, also given by divine instruction, was Lo Ruhama, meaning not loved or without mercy. It was a bitter sentence. Speaking his daughter's name, Hosea felt on his lips the sorrow of divine withdrawal. The people who had once been loved now heard from God a heavy silence. The pain returned with the third child, a boy named Lo-Ammonat, my people. The message was sharp as a blade. You are no longer my people, and I am no longer your God. It was the climax of estrangement, the declared rupture of the covenant built on love and promise. As Hosea looked at his children, he saw not only his own offspring, but also a portrait of God's heart. The prophet's household became a small mirror of what was happening between the Lord and Israel. Each name, each child, each cry in the night carried the echoes of a broken relationship, a rejected love, a wounded hope. And still, there was an unresolved mystery. Gomer continued living in instability, and over the children hung the silent question of their true paternity. This silent and painful uncertainty was part of the burden Hosea carried with honor and faith. Despite everything, he remained holding his children in his arms, with his home shattered, with his heart broken, but with his eyes fixed on the God who, even in judgment, never stopped calling his people back. While his private life collapsed quietly within his home, Hosea could not remain silent before the nation. He was a prophet, and as such, he had the responsibility to speak in the name of the Lord, even when his soul was weary and his heart was wounded. The pain he lived in secret strengthened his words before a people who refused to listen. He walked through the streets of Israel with the firmness of someone who knows the truth. Even as a target of mockery and scornful looks, he proclaimed his message in the squares, before rulers, at the city gates. He exposed the rampant idolatry, the empty sacrifices, the trust in political alliances that diverted the people from their true security, the Lord. His words carried emotion and lament. Hosea did not preach with anger, but with the weight of someone who knew from the inside what it was to love and be betrayed. He knew what it meant to give oneself completely and receive abandonment in return. For this reason, Each prophecy carried a depth beyond the sound of his voice. There was a silent testimony behind every denunciation. But the people remained blind. They were religious, but not loyal. They offered sacrifices, but not their hearts. They sought protection in Egypt and Assyria, but ignored the God who had formed them. They lived like Gomer, restless, insatiable, always searching for something to fill the inner void. Hosea also faced resistance from the religious and political leaders. His accusations were uncomfortable. His story was viewed with suspicion. After all, how could someone speak in God's name while living with a woman like Gomer? Many criticized him. Few understood that his suffering was part of his divine calling. Even so, he continued, not out of vanity or desire for recognition, but out of love. Love for God, love for the people, love for the truth. His ministry was a continuous plea for Israel to awaken. He knew that if the people did not return to the Lord, judgment would be severe. In every message, every warning, every gesture, Hosea made it clear that there was still time. Time to return, time to repent, time to rebuild the covenant. But time moved forward, and Israel seemed increasingly deaf to the prophet's call. While Hosea proclaimed the Lord's message with a firm voice and wounded soul, Gomer walked a path that grew darker and more distant. There was no trace left of the woman who had once accepted life under the prophet's care. She surrendered herself completely to a life marked by instability, disordered desires, and deceptions that promised pleasure but offered only captivity. Gomer abandoned the safety of home for illusory promises. She sought in the touch of strangers what she could not recognize in the pure love Hosea had given her. As the days passed, she became dependent on the gifts and favors her lovers provided, and when those benefits ended, she was cast aside, discarded, ignored. She was no longer valued. She was exploited. Little by little, she lost everything. Her dignity, her care, her very name. She began to survive as someone invisible, without identity, without direction. Her clothes grew worn. Her face no longer reflected the glow it once had. Through the streets, she walked without purpose, guided only by a formless desire, by an emptiness that imprisoned her soul, even though her feet still walked free. The moment came when her situation grew even worse. Gomer was taken to be sold as a slave. She was no longer merely rejected. She was now treated as an object. Her body, once desired, was exposed in silence, in a marketplace where no one saw her as a person. It was the final abyss, the point where every escape ends. Gomer's journey reflected the very path of Israel, whose, like the people had traded their freedom for chains. They sought protection in foreign gods, in foreign nations, in their own desires. But the consequence was always the same. Destruction. What once promised to fill, now only consumed. And Hosea, he knew. He knew where Gomer was. He knew how lost she had become. But he also discerned that God was still speaking, that even in the midst of collapse, the Lord's love had not been extinguished. Every night, the prophet interceded. At every rumor about her, his chest burned. He had not forgotten the woman he once loved, because the story was not yet over. And soon God would give Hosea a new command, a command that would bring light into the darkest place. On a silent morning, the prophet heard the divine instruction, a command that, to Anjon Elsie, would have seemed absurd and dishonorable. But it revealed the heart of God. Go again. Love the woman loved by another. The order was direct. The Lord called Hosea to seek Gomer, to redeem her, to love her again. The prophet did not hesitate. With determined steps and a racing heart, he went to the market where Gomer had been taken. There he found the most humiliating scene he could imagine. Men and women being traded like merchandise. And among them, her, almost impossible to recognize. Dulled eyes, a weary face, a body marked by contempt. There were no accusations. Hosea did not reopen the past. He did not point out failures. He simply obeyed the divine command. He paid the required price, 15 pieces of silver. A simple, symbolic payment, yet enough to take her out of that place. It was the cost of redemption, and through this act, the prophet not only freed his wife, he restored her lost dignity. The crowd watched in silence. There was surprise, perhaps mockery. How could anyone take back someone who had hurt him so deeply? How love again the one who had rejected him so many times? But Hosea did not act according to human logic. He acted out of love, out of commitment, out of covenant, out of a love that reflected the very heart of God. Bringing Gomer home, Hosea spoke with gentleness and firmness. He told her she would live with him, that she would no longer pursue other men, that for a time she would remain apart, relearning the meaning of belonging, respect, and faithfulness. It was the beginning of a new chapter, not of punishment, but of rebuilding. In that act of redemption, a profound truth came to light. Gomer's restoration was the foreshadowing of what God intended to do with Israel. Even after so much unfaithfulness, so many deviations, the Lord was still willing to pay the price to seek them, to receive them, to love them again. Hosea embodied God's message once more. And now, with Gomer back home, a slow and precious process of restoration began. The pain was still there. The memories were still heavy. But where true love works, hope begins to sprout, even among ruins. The days after the rescue were marked by silence, care, and new beginnings. The house, once filled with absence, now breathed a different atmosphere. There was no rush. Hosea demanded no instant changes. He simply remained by her side, like someone who patiently cultivates a seed in soil marked by scars. Gomer, for her part, was no longer the same. Slavery had left deep marks, but what shaped her now was the quiet love of the prophet. He did not bring up her failures. He did not demand explanations. She perceived in his eyes and gestures that she belonged there, that she still had a place. With time, new words were spoken. Hosea established a new covenant with Gomer. He declared that she would live with him in faithfulness, that she would no longer give herself to other men, and that he too would be faithful to her. It was more than a marital pact. It was the reflection of the renewal God desired for Israel. Gomer listened, and slowly something inside her aligned once more. She was no longer only the woman marked by her past. She began to rediscover her identity, her honor, her voice. The children, once carrying names of judgment, now lived in an environment where love was being restored. The family that had been a stage of pain now revealed signs of hope. Hosea continued prophesying, but now with a new light in his eyes. His story was no longer only a denunciation. It was also a promise. Every word addressed to the people was an invitation to return, a call to abandon idols, tear their hearts, and come back to the Lord. He knew that just as Gomer had been restored, Israel could be too. Hosea's faithfulness was not naive. It was conscious. He knew where Gomer had been. He knew what the people were capable of, but he also knew the God who had chosen him, a God who, even wounded, continued to love. A God who does not give up, who heals, who transforms. The restored covenant in his home was an early sign of what God longed to do with an entire nation and with every person who, even shattered, is still willing to return to the Father's arms. As the days passed, the story of Hosea and Gomer began to spread. Some heard it with disbelief, others with astonishment. But many came to understand that the union, once controversial and misunderstood, had now become a powerful representation of God's love for Israel. The prophet, with a life marked by suffering and restoration, had become a symbol of hope. Hosea's words were no longer just severe warnings. They were living promises. In the midst of the admonitions of judgment, there were appeals to return, declarations of forgiveness, and glimpses of a new beginning. He announced a time when God would bring back the exiles, renew the land, and once again call my people, those who had been rejected. For the people of Israel, so accustomed to idolatry, hearing that the Lord still desired them had a profound impact. Even after so many sins, so many alliances with foreign nations, and so much spiritual coldness, God remained constant. And Hosea was the living proof of that. He did not speak of a theoretical love. He knew in his own skin and spirit what it meant to forgive and start again. The prophet's home, once marked by absence and pain, was now a place of living testimony. The children who carried prophetic names would one day also become signs of transformation, because the God of Israel was not only just, he was equally compassionate. His justice did not cancel his tenderness. His correction did not destroy his desire to restore. In every message, Hosea showed that a return was possible. That even Gomer, a rejected slave, had been granted the right to begin again. And if this was possible for her, it would also be possible for an entire nation that would repent. Hope did not arise because the people deserved it, but because God was love, and that love did not give up. Even in the face of the deepest unfaithfulness, he continued, extending his hand, waiting for a genuine return. Thus, Hosea's life ceased to be just an individual story. It became a living prophecy, a message embodied to the heart of every man and woman in Israel. There is still time. There is still hope. The Lord's love does not fail. The story of Hosea and Gomer does not end with a big emotional plot twist, nor with the guarantee of a happily ever after. It ends with something even deeper, the revelation of a love that remains faithful even when everything around collapses, a love that never tires of seeking, saving, and waiting. By obeying God and uniting himself to Gomer, Hosea surrendered his life to a purpose greater than his own. His journey became a reflection of divine pain and compassion. With each betrayal, he felt what God felt. With each attempt at reconciliation, he echoed the Lord's call to his people. And by redeeming Gomer at the slave market, he displayed before everyone the scandalous grace that restores what was lost. This narrative teaches us with depth and beauty that God does not love us because we are flawless. He loves us despite our failures. Even when we chase after our modern idols, money, recognition, fleeting pleasures, he continues pursuing us in love. Even when we settle for emotional scraps, the Lord is willing to pay the price of our rescue. Hosea's faithfulness reveals the kind of faithfulness that God expects from us. Not moral perfection, but a broken heart willing to return, to begin again, to remain. Gomer, a symbol of unfaithfulness, also represents us. We are often like her, wounded, confused, run away. But the same God who did not give up on her does not give up on us either. In the practice of faith, this story calls us to deep and transformative actions. It encourages us to learn to truly forgive, even when we have been deeply hurt, allowing God's grace to heal what we cannot overcome on our own. It invites us to seek rebuilding where there were only ruins before, trusting that the Lord is able to rewrite stories that seemed beyond recovery. It also challenges us to reflect God's love in our relationships, not a shallow love, but a love that acts with grace, patience, and truth. Hosea's narrative warns us to abandon our present-day idols, which draw us away from faithfulness to the Lord, and to return to our first love with our whole heart. Finally, it teaches us that our worth is not tied to what we have done or the mistakes we have made, but to the redeeming gaze of God, who sees us not for what we were, but for what he calls us to be. Hosea's journey was not simple, but it was sacred, and even today, it reminds us that God's story with his people is made of a love that persists, a hope that is reborn, and promises that are fulfilled even after the darkest valleys. I want to thank you, with all my heart, for watching this powerful biblical story of Hosea and Gomer all the way to the end. If you've made it this far, it's because something in this message spoke to you. Thank you so much for walking with us on this journey of faith. Before you leave, I want to ask you for a simple favor that makes all the difference, so that more people can be reached by the Word of God. If this video blessed your life, click the like button right now. It may seem like something small, but YouTube recognizes that this content is important, and that way it shows this video to many more people. Your like is literally a seed you plant in someone's life, and if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, take this moment and subscribe right now. Also activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of the biblical stories we post here. Every day, thousands of people are growing in faith with us, and I don't want you to miss a single word that God has prepared for you. Another very important thing, Share this video with your family, friends, WhatsApp groups, with someone you know who needs to hear this message today. You can be the bridge God wants to use to transform someone's life. With just one click, you spread light, faith, and hope. And before we finish, I have a special invitation for you. The next story is already available here on the channel, prepared with great care to continue strengthening your faith. It will deeply impact you. Just click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now. Don't leave it for later. Continue this spiritual journey with us. May God powerfully bless your life. I'll see you in the next video.